All right, let's go ahead and get started with the OKD Working Group Community Development Meeting for March 21st of 2023. And we have a sort of mandate, I think, to go through the project planning board and really start to use that as our area of focus in terms of planning for community development and whatnot. So let's go ahead and open that up. Would it help if I shared my screen as we sort of navigated through it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you don't mind, just also put in the link in the chat.
Yeah, it's at the top of the meeting as well, at the top of the agenda, but yeah, I'll put it in the chat as well. There. And in there. Oh yeah, there we go.
Thank you.
Okay, so project planning. Brian, do you want to drive on the board or should I?
I don't mind either way. It's probably easier if you drive, if you're sharing, if you're going to share.
Well, or you can share, whichever works best. I don't care what folks think.
It's probably better you do because I've just got my laptop back. I smashed my laptop screen and none of the permissions are set up. So I'll probably need to restart Zoom. Hence why I was a bit late coming in.
That's all right. It's all good. Okay, so here's the project board. And again, the idea is for us to get back into using. We started to set it up and then we sort of drifted away. I don't recall the reasons for it, but the idea is to use this for our planning moving forward and to really shape the meeting around it so that we can make sure that we get things done. So let's look at in progress, and we'll move basically from right to left. I think that's a good way to try to get rid of stuff that's maybe been completed but we don't know or whatnot.
So what I did is I moved a lot of the stuff that was in progress into ready or backlog.
Okay.
Just so we start off with a little bit clear. So these are the two things that we talked about last week, where the rest of the stuff, I think quite a lot of it is stale.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and take a quick look.
And number 19 can be moved to done, just FYI, the one in review.
This one here?
Yes, okay. Brian merged that today. So thank you, Brian.
Okay, fantastic.
So we can at least start on a high note of moving something.
There we go. Perfect.
Yeah, good one.
Okay, so documentation marking 3.1 as end of life. This is definitely important. I reached out to Mr. Burke and it sounded like he was going to be able to start showing up, but he hasn't, and we can write things out for him and I think email him if he can maybe work off hours. So, okay, so it looks like, yeah.
Just like, no, he was here 2 weeks ago.
Oh, he was, okay.
Yep.
Okay. So what's the general consensus? And forgive me, folks, I wasn't here 2 weeks ago, so I'll have to catch up a little bit. So are we basically good to go, and we're going to pull it from.
So the consensus was we don't want to remove it because we still have people in the community that are using the 311 documents. I mean, we know about 2 or 3 that still are out there that haven't yet gone to 4. So we didn't want to move it, but I think the idea was that we put a banner across the top. There was a suggestion that CentOS use a certain wording, but we looked and it's not in the documentation, but they do have end of life on downloads. So they just call them on the download page. They simply use end of build or end of life.
Yeah, Brian, we haven't released that blog post that's going to have the end of build in it yet.
Okay, because Michael was asking for the wording. If you
Yeah.
just go a bit further down, so we were just going to copy the wording from the CentOS community. So once we have that, I think Michael's just going to put a banner on the top of the documentation just to say that it's not under active maintenance, it's end of life, or whatever the wording we decide. And I think he's coming back and said, what is the wording?
Okay. And our general
put it in here.
consensus is end of life, end of build. What do folks think?
Well, I mean, in reality, everything but 4.12 is out of maintenance. We don't retrofit anything back beyond the current version, do we?
Mm-hmm.
So do we need, do we want to put that on everything? Not under active maintenance, or no longer being maintained on everything but the latest? Or do we want to make 3.11 a sort of a different message, sort of, this isn't the current design or release or anything else?
Yeah, I'm partial to everything except 4.12 being no longer actively maintained, using the words no longer actively maintained.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Also, the OpenShift, like the official OpenShift product documentation already does that, right? If you go to an older branch, it tells you that this is not supported anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just
we
think,
have to be careful of the world. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well. But I think we also need to be clear that we are different from OCP, because I think there's a lot of confusion that a lot of people associate OKD and assume there's a similar pattern as OCP. So I think we do need something that says that we're different from OCP. We don't have the long-term support versions. We never backport any fix to any previous version. We don't really make that clear in any of the documentation. But
That's right,
as
yeah.
Jamie was about to say, is we also don't have any supported versions because we're a community build and there is no official support available for this. It is community assistance rather than formal support.
So just as a reference, if I go to the OpenShift Container Platform 4.3 documentation, it says there with a big red banner on the top, you are viewing documentation for a release that is no longer maintained.
Right.
And I'm actually surprised that that doesn't show up for our documentation, since it's just a copy-paste thing.
Well, they have, or at least they used to, they have like basically flags that flip sections on and off.
Oh no, it actually also shows for us. So if I go to OKD
Oh, does it?
4.6,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
if I go to the OKD 4.6, then it also shows there. So we would just need to change the flag then, basically, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and we also want to look at what we put on the okd.io site. So one thing I don't think we have anywhere is just a blurb about our release cycle. Because we sort of copied and pasted everything from what Vadim had on the README at the repo. Maybe we create a task to just write a paragraph about the release cycle and how that's, to answer Brian's point, to write something that basically identifies what the release cycle is and how it's different from OCP. Does that sound like a reasonable task? That sort of addresses, at least from the website, what we need to do. Anyone?
I just wanted to add a comment in here. I think like we should definitely make like a page that describes our support policy or our like whatever we're calling this, you know, like our really our whatever we cover. But I think we should actually go further than the OCP docs. I think we should have that banner on every version, even the current version that just says, and instead of saying this version isn't supported or something like that, I think we should call out the fact that, you know, tell the user OKD's support and maintenance lifecycle is different than OCP. You should look at this page, because for a new user, if they don't see anything there, they might expect that a version they're getting into has long-term support or something. And I think we should make it explicit to everyone, even someone who's just starting, say, hey, look, if you're on 4.x, you know, you should know that once we go to 4.x+1, the OKD working group is not going to like, you know, we're not going to continue support for this, right? And we're not going to backport for that. So I think even as someone making an initial decision, that's an important thing that they need to think about.
Yes, but do you need that on every page?
I mean, I've just gone to the documentation. There is something we've got to fix. If you just go to this page, I'll put it in the chat. There is a section called support in the OKD documentation, which says get support, visit the Red Hat customer portal, review knowledge base articles, submit a support case, and review additional product documentation and resources.
All right.
So,
All right. So we need to change that. So let's create 2 tickets for this, because I think we sort of already know the direction we're going. I think one of them is create a page, right? So create page outlining release cycle and support. Does that cover it?
well, I think we've got to detach the support section in the OKD docs from the
Well, I'm
OCP
creating a
docs.
separate, I want to create
Yeah,
2 separate items, because one would go to Michael Burke, and then one is for us to do on the website. So
I mean, the other way of doing it is, why don't we just put a support section in the OKD docs?
do we want to do, we've never actually added a section before to the docs that's our own. That's true. How do folks feel like, this brings up an interesting question of, is this information we would want to have just in the docs or also on the website?
Do we want people to think we give support, or is support just gonna point to, you can ask questions, here's a FAQ, so on and so forth, because you don't want anyone to expect support from us.
Right, and that's why I'm a little bit leery of using the word support. Or I don't know.
Maybe we can go for
Community
something like
assistant?
is no longer actively developed. Because I mean, it's also not really true that we don't support all the versions in a way. I mean, we're not offering commercial support, but if someone comes up with a question, let's say for 4.11 or 4.10 now in our issue tracker, at least probably some people are going to chime in and have some comments. But of course, you're not getting commercial support, but you also, as Jamie mentioned earlier, you're also not getting that for the latest version.
Right,
Maybe
and this
calling-
was let me just finish this one thought. One of the things that maybe newer folks who aren't in the meeting aren't aware of is that early on there was a very vehement discussion where Vadim, Christian et al. From Red Hat were very adamant not to use the word support in any way, because it could lead people to think that at some level there was a commitment. I'm just throwing that out there so people have the context of where this comes from.
I think it's also just worth mentioning that they were getting tagged in, and people were getting quite excited in the community channels, saying it's been 20 minutes since I raised this and no one's answered yet. And they were spamming multiple channels on Slack, on Google Groups. So that's where I think some of the sensitivity comes through, that if you do OKD in production, you need to understand that you are on your own. Where the community may do its best to help you out, you cannot expect any SLAs or even a response. I mean, there's a question come in today on a very specific environment. So unless somebody else has that specific environment, they're probably not going to get a lot of help.
So I inadvertently cut someone off. Does that person want to chime in again? Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. What about saying community assistance first support? So there's the expectation this is coming from the community, not from Red Hat or anyone else, and it's assistance. So, you know, and you can even put a qualifier, you know, if you ask for support, you know, if you have a question, this is coming from members of the community, please understand this is not their full-time job. They will get to it when they get to it, if they can get to it.
Right.
You know, so give them some level of expectation as well.
Yeah, I like it. So circling back to the question, is this something we want to put in the OKD docs themselves? And work with Michael Burke to get a page and or something on the okd.io website?
I'd say at least the site. I don't know if you want it in the docs. I don't know how hard it is to get the docs brought over from OCP and stuff, but definitely on the website where we have more control, I would think would be a good place.
Yeah, the way that it works briefly is there's a series of scripts that they run where there's flags that say include or exclude the books, as they're called, in the documentation. And that's how the OKD documentation gets generated. And we reach out to Michael Burke and let him know, please remove this. And then he puts tags around a section that will remove it next time the generating script runs. But we've not yet actually added a book, as they were called, you know, added a page of unique content before to the OKD product documentation. We've never done that before. So it sounds like at least the website. How many people think on the website? Straw poll. Yes, I can't see you, so just say yes.
Yes.
Though it's already kind of mentioned on the website. If you go to the help or getting help page, it says there's no official product support for OKD as it is a community project. All assistance is provided by volunteers from the user community.
And what page is that on? Is that on the front page?
It's not on the front page, it's under help and then getting help.
Getting help, okay.
And that's perfect wording for it.
Yeah. So do we want a page that outlines, I created this because we originally were talking about the release cycle and letting people know about the release cycle. I think at least having something on the website describing the release cycle is a good idea. Because we do get a lot of questions about, well, when is, you know, OCP 412 came out, like, does that mean OKD 412 is out? You know, does that mean, you know, stuff like that, so.
I mean, having it on the website is nice because, you know, I think as Amy suggested, like, it's really easy for us to change that. And then we could always, if we end up putting a banner in the docs, we can always have a link from that banner to the support page on the website. So that makes it easy too.
All right, I will assign this task to myself. I'm happy to come up with some language. Yeah, Brian.
And then don't forget, we do need to remove the support section from docs.okd.io.
Right, and that's going to be a separate ticket, so that'll be remove support page from
It's a whole section
from OKD, right? OKD remove support section from OKD docs. Okay.
Are we able to make changes to the landing page of the docs site? If you just go to docs.okd.io, it doesn't even mention anything about it being a community led distribution. Basically says it's a distribution of Kubernetes optimized for applications and is used to build OpenShift Online and OpenShift Container Platform. So if you didn't know what OKD was and you landed on this page, you might assume that this is like a fully supported Red Hat product.
Yeah,
It'd be nice if we could stick the word community in there somewhere.
yeah,
That's a
good
good
point.
catch.
Okay. All right. So add, how would you phrase that? Add, whoops. Get to that.
I actually think we need to review that because we do have the OKD home link at the very top. It's not that obvious. And then both the home and the contribute go to the same place. So I think we just need to refresh. We need to review, refresh that home landing, docs.okd.io landing page. And we've discussed in the past about the select version. We've still got down to 3.8. I thought you were going to remove that just for 3.11.
We
then
did, yeah, right.
So I just think we need to refresh that whole page.
Okay, Brian, do you want me to assign this to you to?
Yeah, I'll work with Michael in terms of working out how to get that done.
Okay, fantastic. And we've got a lot of new folks that have been joining the meetings lately. Feel free to volunteer for stuff. You know, even if it's just editing something on the website, we can point you to how the repo works that controls the website, and anything else. Feel free to volunteer for that. Okay. Let's see, going back to this. Okay, so create documentation for single node installer using the assisted installer, and that I think is still in progress, right?
I've left it there, but I didn't know anyone's actually working on it because Luigi is doing that, but he's using it for the UPI, the manual process rather than the assisted installer. So I don't know whether that's actually being done, but I left it there. Dwayne was looking at that, but I think he.
Yeah, I'm still looking at it. Still going to work on it.
Okay, well, let's keep it in progress. And
then the other thing is, sorry, Jamie.
Go ahead.
Luigi, can we have a ticket for yours on here as well? And
Yes,
I noticed that you haven't yet.
Yeah, I've put it in the new, and I was going to actually ask, should I bring it over and put it in progress or in review? Because I mean, I've done most of the documentation, just needs a couple of eyes on it, and yeah, this is not good, this is good type of thing. What do you say?
Okay, so are you planning to add that to okd.io or leave it elsewhere? Or
yes, look, you tell me, because I've got I've got a draft there, installing a single node OKD cluster the real hard way. So should I just move it to in review, and then if you guys are happy, we can then look at including it somewhere as a blog or in the OKD documentation? I don't know. You tell me.
we need something in the documentation because we have nothing in the. And again, I think this comes back down to needing a separate version in the OKD docs versus the OCP docs, because the OCP docs now use the Red Hat hosted assisted installer. So we obviously can't use that. So we do need different documentations, because I don't think we have any SNO. We asked for that to be removed until we resolved it. So I don't know. Personally, I think it should be in the docs, because that's where all the rest of the installed content is.
Okay.
But we need to speak to Mike about how easy is it to actually add OKD only sections.
Luigi, LM or Luigi?
Yeah, the Luigi, the one on top is my private GitHub, and the LM is the Red Hat one.
Okay.
Yeah, use the Red Hat one. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we're putting this in progress or ready. Where do you want it?
In progress.
Yeah.
Progress. Yeah.
All right. All right, now let's go to ready. Investigate the available tutorials for setting up OKD to determine, and we did a lot of work on that. And then someone actually started asking questions on the thread itself. And then I think that's where we left it. So we've got this great list. And I think we wanted to sort of cull this for what we think is the best, right? Something that we can highlight. So what I think what we want to do is have folks contribute on this thread to which ones you think are worthy of highlighting on the website for folks to utilize. But so much of it is really old. I do appreciate, Dwayne, that you put the age of these things in here. So yeah, I would say moving forward, we'll check up on this in 2 weeks, but if folks could comment on what ones you think are worthy of making it to the website, that would be helpful. And then that way we can sort of have a curated list of stuff that at least we're highlighting examples of documentation that we haven't been able to fill, or we don't have the people power to maintain, but it'll help our users along. So definitely something that's ready to be tackled is for folks to select good examples of documentation that we can direct people to. Define a getting started page for beginners. And this sort of, Diane was going to do it, and obviously she has stepped away in the bigger picture. So does anyone want to take this on?
Well, I mean, it sounds similar to the glossary effort, because you got to know your vocabulary to be able to get started, to know where you're going to go and everything. If that could be, maybe it's the same thing if everyone agrees.
I feel like this is different. I feel like this is like very basic, like how do you get started with OKD? Download the installer, do this. What do you need to plan ahead of time? I think that's a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit different than the glossary effort.
And I know Michael came back with, do we not already have this? And he put a couple of links in.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say the same. There is already the getting started installation that is kind of, I mean, it's not extensive, but
if I remember the conversation, which again, we didn't document very well at the time, this was like somebody that's new. There's like a wall of information, and this seems a little bit impenetrable, because we say, here's 23 platforms where you can put this stuff. Good luck. Sort of.
Right.
So I think that was what kicked this one off. It was, is there anything we can do to sort of handhold somebody in terms of just getting them active? Because I mean, if you look at a lot of open source sites, they have a getting started, which is a hello world 10-15 minute exercise, and then we put them into the real docs. I think it was that idea, even though OKD isn't a 10-15 minute getting started reality, because it's Kubernetes and it's a full blown install of it. So
well, if we were to do something like that, what would we do? Would we do AWS, since that's like the most rock solid of the installs?
I think the inhibitor here is cost.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
not something, yeah.
If I do a 6-node, I mean, yes, maybe once we have the assisted installer SNO, but even then you've got to set up the image for the assisted installer, run through that wizard, download the ISO, then upload it, and then it's not a, here's 3 steps to get you going.
Well, if we did AWS though, we could do an install, basic instructions for an install and destroy, right? And in which case they wouldn't incur the cost, and we would make it clear that this is just a basic walkthrough to set things up so people can play and then tear it down.
I think even to get an SNO, we want too much for the free tiers. I mean, I think we say, is it 32 or 46 gig is a minimal install on the docs?
Also, I'm not sure how much an SNO actually showcases the kind of the power of OKD.
Yeah,
exactly.
The fact that everything is highly available out of the box
Exactly.
and multi-tenant
good
and so on
point,
and so
Jack.
forth, because you might then spin up an OKD and think, okay, well, this is slow compared to everything that I'm used to.
Yeah. Does it make sense for us to have a basic, and we've done many in the past, but they've been kind of opinionated in terms of platform, but a basic video of installation and destroying on AWS, just so that people can watch? Because we don't, if people go to the website, there's nothing that really shows you what the cluster looks like in terms of the console or the CLI. There's really nothing that grabs you that says, hey, you can have a Kubernetes cluster that looks cool like this, right? And do some fun stuff. Like, I don't really have anything that's visually appealing in terms of visualizing this cluster, being able to visualize, nodes with stuff running on top of it.
All right, so what I'm getting from here is we do not have any like getting started documentations on how to set up an OKD cluster anywhere.
No, there is.
There is, but it's all very, do it on UPI on vSphere, do it in AWS with IPI, do it. There's nothing that's generalized because there's so many options.
Well, there is also the high level installation one they basically tells you, okay, you need to download the OpenShift install binary. It's on our OKD page, okd.io.
This is the OCP one, and then there's, let's see.
Yeah, I think the challenge is if you're doing it in a home environment, you've got all the network stuff that you've got to do first.
Yeah.
If you're doing it on a cloud environment, you better put your credit card in and be prepared for a shock.
Yeah,
so we don't have a way of doing this in a virtual machine or anything that we could walk them through.
I mean, you want to have a really beefy laptop then.
Yeah.
But if we're talking getting started in a home lab and you want to be testing whatever code you're working on, if they do a development, it tends to be local machine. I am agreeing with that.
And then we come down to, well, why wouldn't you just use OpenShift local CRC or whatever it's called, which does have an OKD flavor to it.
Which I haven't really used. I know that they did that effort the past couple months, but I haven't had a chance to play with the new release of it.
Yeah, the CRC is really taxing on a laptop. I mean, you need at least 32 gig of RAM and a couple of CPUs available. And then if you're doing your development, like some people use, I don't know, Visual Studio or JetBrains IDE, and then by the time you've developed your first application, your machine is halted.
So I want to come back to the suggestion from Jamie. I think a video is a really excellent idea because it allows us to kind of take that cost once of spinning up whatever 6-node cluster And then also showing some of the powers, like, okay, maybe let's do an upgrade now, or what happens if I delete one of the machines, or if one of the machines is sick. And then you just see that OKD takes care of everything in the video, and maybe this can be covered within half an hour up to an hour.
I mean, I can
Okay.
definitely edit any videos you have. I can play editor for any getting started stuff you have. The only thing about making videos is if things are gonna visually change frequently, you're
Mhm.
constantly having
Yep.
to redo videos.
That is true.
Wait.
Yep.
Can I make a suggestion? Can we create a ticket or do the ticket and give this task to somebody to define what the getting started experience should be? Because I
Yeah.
think this is what this debate's around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think rather
Yeah.
than fixing it now, let's
Yeah.
assign the task to somebody. I mean, I don't know whether you fancy this one, Jack, or to actually drive this one along, but let somebody define this, or we can use a discussion thread to actually say what should the experience be, and then we can look at creating it.
Well, we have the item, basically define a getting started page for beginners. Is this suffice, or should we create a new one that's more like, should it be for beginners? Like, you know, like define a getting started page in general, or edit this.
Well, I mean, for this one, I think we need to take Diane off, and somebody needs to volunteer to drive this forward. And
Well,
I
that's
think
what I
the
was
first,
originally suggesting, but does anyone want to do it? Does anyone want to take this on with assistance from us, of course? But
I
at
mean,
least
I
be the
can
point person.
assist. I don't know enough to run through it to create something. I mean, if someone's got notes, I can definitely put it together. I do a lot of onboarding into open source projects. But I don't know if I necessarily have the technical knowledge to create the initial material
Okay.
as far as OKD is concerned.
but I think we need either a discussion thread or somebody to put a proposal forward of what it should be, because rather than solving it now, I think it needs somebody to actually do a little bit of research, a little bit of work, and actually make it happen.
That's what this one is from July 12th, 2022, isn't it? So if I look at that, it's define a getting started page. OpenShift, let's use this thread to hash out what a getting started page for OKD/OpenShift beginners would look like, etc.
Okay.
Does that cover it? Okay. So,
All right, assign it to me.
okay, what's your GitHub? Yeah.
Spots SPOTZ. If it requires two-factor, put another Z on there. If not, that'll work.
What is it?
That's fine. As long as
Okay.
it doesn't need two-factor auth. I have a different one for two-factor auth.
Does it? Are you popping up here? Will you pop
I'm
up
not
here?
popping up there, but that is me.
Okay. Are you part of this, of the OKD? Have you been added overall to OKD
Probably
yet?
not.
Okay, then I'll come back to this, but yeah, we'll
Okay.
assign that to you. We'll add you to that, and then we'll do that. Okay. Okay, we've got 18 minutes. Let's see if we can fly through review guides section docs. Yeah, actually someone mentioned something in the channel, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, about an outdated doc. And I asked them to put in a ticket. I don't know that they did or not. But we probably should actually cycle through the guides again, because now they're probably once again outdated, or even more outdated.
Well, wasn't the idea these were going to be replaced by the other ticket?
They will be once we get, but I feel like we need to get something happening to clean these up instead of just letting them sit. So do we pull them down in general and just wait for the other effort to come up? Because people are getting misdirected, I guess, is my concern. Because the comment from a user 2 weeks ago was there was misinformation basically that wasn't valid anymore in one of the guides.
In which case we should take them down.
Yeah. I don't know. What do folks think? Take them down in their entirety, or do we review them real quick? Maybe at the next meeting and see if they make the cut to stay or not. And this is the guides that are right here. These What do folks think?
I
Because
may
some of
run
these are,
through that single node OKD one. So if it needs to be updated, I can update it while I'm going.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of, yeah, this is Charo's prerequisites. Yeah, and some of these aren't really guides. They're kind of,
They're kind of the getting started how-tos.
yeah, they are actually. Some of them are way over, including what you should do for networking, and some of them are on the other end of the spectrum of, you know, something completely less technical.
I mean, they were basically a summary of a live streaming event, weren't they, that ran, what, 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, basically, yeah.
I like the idea of moving them to the blog section, because it would be a pity to lose them. But
Mhm.
at the same time, I also see how it can be confusing, especially since these are like, written by very different people and have very different styles and levels of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like look at this guy. This guy sucks. What a
I mean,
horrible header.
I also think that even the install config has changed since then. So if you use the scripts from here or the Git repos, they won't work because they changed the,
Mhm.
I forget what they've changed a couple of the fields that are now mandatory or default within the install config file, for example.
Well, I like,
So-
okay, so for example, this is the one that I wrote. I think it's helpful, but I think you're right as blog posts. And we were going to reach out to the authors, but I don't think we got contact info for every single one of these. So
No.
prerequisites, does anyone remember who wrote prerequisites? We know this is me. Who's prerequisites UPI? Anyone remember?
We can probably find that out because there'll be a video of them talking about it on the.
Yeah, some of them were
Community
videos
event.
and some weren't. So single, well, Shri, we know who that is. We know Vadim. I don't know who did the single node.
It's there, the link's there.
Oh yeah,
Charo,
that's right.
isn't
That
it?
was Charo, right? That was Charo,
Yeah.
right? Azure. Yeah. AWS IPI.
Yeah, it was the Azure or the AWS where they've changed the node
Yeah.
sizes or node names, wasn't it? That was the ticket, yeah.
Right, exactly. It was now they use, before they used to use M4 and now they use M6I. Is that right? I think so. Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So what do we think? Do we pull them and convert them to blog posts after being updated? Or do we convert them to blog
I think-
posts as is, or?
I would
I think-
convert them as is and add an appropriate date
Disclaimer.
tag,
Okay.
or maybe also a disclaimer. Yes. I mean, as a citizen of the internet, I think it's common to come across outdated blog posts, but you just need to have a look from when it is. And if you see that something is from 5 years ago, then maybe the information can be useful, but maybe also not.
Do we have a gut feel from the community as to where people are actually running OKD? Like maybe our guides need to be more focused on how people are actually using OKD rather than all the various ways that it can be used.
Yeah, we had this discussion before a couple of times. The thing is, none of us really knows because we don't have insight into the Red Hat telemetry. And then that also just mainly covers OpenShift and not all of the OKD deployments. So it's really hard to know for OKD specifically.
Yeah, we did do a survey, which actually we probably at this point could redo the survey. We did do a survey last spring, I think it was, and it was like across the board. The results were across the board.
Okay.
Let me actually, that's a good point. Let me synthesize the survey results that we have into a document. I'll create a ticket for that. Who wants to do move guides to blog posts? Anyone want to at least take a stab at that? Basically, all you need to do is copy the content into new pages in the repo that holds the blog posts.
I can do that.
Okay.
I posted a link to the actual event, the blog about the event, and most of the owners and
Okay.
as are listed there anyway.
Okay. And this is the size survey results from 2022. And we could do a survey every year, right? And have it be sort of like Fedora and other projects that basically like regularly conduct a survey of users to try to get a sense of direction moving forward. We know that the biggest thing was operators, right? So to this.
I can't remember actually seeing the results of that last survey. I know I definitely filled it in, but I don't remember actually seeing what the.
Yeah, we talked about it, but I never did a blog post on it, which I probably, maybe I'll actually turn this into doing a blog post about it. We got a fair amount of responses. It was like 40 responses or something like that. Okay. Oh, that was the other thing is we don't have like a process document for actually using the projects in GitHub, like how do we manage the board? How do we actually define giving people access and whatnot? I think this one's ready. We just need to sit down and actually spend a meeting or two, like really focused on this. Like, what is that process? No, Miko has contributed to this discussion before, is like, okay, what's the process for people graduating to different levels of participation? So maybe at the next meeting, we'll spend some time on that one. Redesign the OKD.io homepage. Brian, do we know if their name is escaping me right now? The person,
Brandon.
the web person, Brendan, right?
Brandon. He came back and said that he was not a designer. He was a developer.
Okay.
Didn't really have the design skills.
Got it. Okay.
So if anybody is a sort of guru at making things look really good and sleek and modern and flash, please step forward. Because I think our page just looks a bit frumpy, and
yeah,
it was a very, very quick port from a different technology, which was meant to be a placeholder while we actually did the proper templates and design in MKDocs.
Yeah.
And it's sort of lived there for like 2.5 years now. And that really adds the bottom section. I mean, we do have that just as a sort of a number one. There is a placeholder there where we can actually just put latest news in. But again, it's not really, it doesn't stand out, or it's just that latest.
Yeah.
So personally, I'm quite fine with the homepage itself. Like, I mean, sure, if you want to improve it, go ahead. But I don't necessarily think it's a bad like it looks bad or anything. I mean, it's very functional, but I think that's okay for an open source project.
I think the comment was, it doesn't grab people. It doesn't sort of say this is something that I'm interested in, or it doesn't help things like stand out. I mean, that latest banner is just using a feature that was already there. It doesn't really sort of stand out and sort of shout for attention or anything. I mean,
well, I much prefer it compared to the commercial sites of some of the other Kubernetes distributions that are out there that are telling me how awesome they are, but not really what they are.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So if you go to, like, I don't know, rancher.com or something like this, you're gonna see lots of fancy things, but
I mean,
it doesn't really tell me much.
the other thing that was something that Diane was saying, that this doesn't really tell you much either. It's got a lot of buzzwords on the homepage, but not a lot of useful information on the actual homepage.
Like, okay, as much as I appreciate that, OCI containers, no one's really gonna be looking at this and going, oh, this
Yeah.
grabs me.
Yeah.
Right.
So again, this was just a direct copy of what was there,
Yeah.
and it's been there for years as the homepage of OKD. So the idea was stripping a lot of this out and just making it plainer language, and
So I think
it's more.
the about page is then maybe more interesting, because they're I like the features are listed there, even though in, again, the very plain,
Mhm.
dense way.
See, this I
Yeah.
feel like would look good, like grabbing the cream off the top of these and having that on the front page. And I don't want to get into the process of updating the web page now,
Yeah.
but yeah.
It comes back to our initial question: is if someone arrived there, does it say why they should want to get involved in this project, or why they would want to use it, what it is actually, in sort of real terms rather than buzzwords. So
Yeah.
it's all around this getting started, bringing people into the community. It's to try and grab them, be more useful, less marketing fluff, more sort of concrete. So that's what all of this was about. So I mean, maybe we should just roll all of these into one activity. Maybe have a workshop. I don't know what people think. If we can get a time, an hour, where we just have a workshop to actually put this issue to bed at some point.
I can see that. I'll add myself to this one just so that we've got someone on it that's active, and then oops. And let me put that one off. Okay. Yeah, let's set up something at the next meeting. Let's discuss when we would want to do that, because we're a little short on time right now, but let's set up a separate session that's going through the website and just saying, okay, this is something we should change. This is something, let's copy this from here. And it doesn't have to be super detailed. Like, we don't have to actually do the process of copying and pasting and everything and writing, but at least if we have a basic set of bullet points of we need to do this, let's move this section up here or whatever, then we could at least have a starting point for someone to do that work. Review license and copyright requirements for community repos.
I mean, this is when we moved to the new org, we sort of stepped out of the Red Hat standards, and
yeah.
So if anyone creates a repo in our org, should they adopt one of the sort of licenses? I mean, the Apache, the OpenGL, are we going to have a standard license that we all agree to? Do we want to make sure that we have a standard layout? Should we want templates set up within the Git repo? All of these things that you normally get by being part of an organization.
Yeah.
So that tag was back in August of 2022.
Yeah.
When we first created the org.
Yeah, I feel like there's two different, there's governance stuff, and then there's sort of aesthetic and informational stuff. And I feel like this is a governance one.
This
I
is
actually
governance.
should start. Yeah, I should
This is governance, because I think it also around that, I think there's another ticket that says we need a process for, say, who can approve pull requests, and should we actually lock out certain branches? And then this then comes into the operator discussion about, if we do create a catalog, how do we govern that catalog? Who has rights to change it? How do we stop somebody, a spurious person, going in and breaking everybody's OKD cluster by putting a rogue update on something, for
Right.
example? And I guess it's the same really around the CentOS Stream stuff. All of that's now built from our repos. How are we managing that? How are we stopping rogue agents from being able to damage them or cause havoc?
Yeah. And we need both sides of the house in this discussion, right? So
yep.
Christian, Vadim, Luigi, and then, you know, the sort of community development folks coming to an understanding of how to process people who want to start participating, and then how to make sure that they have access to what they need and everything like that. Okay. All right.
So
We are.
I think we're pretty open. So just finish that. I think we are pretty open at the minute. I don't think we really have locked anything down from a Git repo point of view at the minute.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we made some headway. We got about a third of the way through everything that's happening. We've got some places to start. Any last minute thoughts before I end the meeting? All right. Thank you for every contribution, every comment. It was very helpful to get things going. And I'll see y'all in 2 weeks.
Cool.
Or next week for the technical meeting.
Yeah.
See you.
Cheers, guys. Cheers.
See you.
Thanks all.
Bye.